All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're cracking open Carl von Clausewitz's On War. You know, that one book you probably already have on your shelf.
Definitely a classic. Clausewitz almost 2 centuries later, and his insights on warfare. Still surprisingly relevant.
It's true. We're not just dusting off old theories here, though. We're tackling Chapter 7 from Book 4. Clausewitz gets into those real make-or-break moments in battle, those turning points that can decide the whole thing.
And what's interesting is he kind of challenges that Hollywood image of battles, where one decisive blow wins it all.
Right, it's more nuanced than that.
Much more. It's like a gradual shift, a tipping point where one side just gains this advantage and it becomes almost impossible to recover.
So how do we pinpoint that shift, that point of decision, as Clausewitz calls it? How do we know when the tide is turned for good?
He gives us a framework, actually, several factors to consider. One is the loss of a really key objective, strategically important.
Okay, so we're not just talking about losing a minor skirmish here.
No, this is big picture stuff. Think a vital supply line, a heavily fortified position, anything that, if lost, throws the whole battle plan out of whack.
Lose a supply route, and suddenly your entire operation is in jeopardy.
Yeah.
And then there's losing crucial terrain, too.
Right, and he's careful to distinguish this, not just any piece of land. This is ground that gives a significant tactical edge. Natural cover, high ground, control over choke points.
It's like losing the high ground in a tactical sense, clear advantage for the enemy.
Exactly. Lose that, and it can be crippling. The enemy can just press their attack much more effectively. But Clausewitz also points to a third factor, and it's a bit more, well, less tangible.
Oh,
This is about the victor, not just pushing forward, but consolidating their gains at the exact moment the enemy's forces start to fragment.
so it's not just about your own advance, but also recognizing when the enemy's ability to coordinate to resist has basically crumbled.
Yeah. Right. It doesn't necessarily mean total annihilation, but their ability to function as a cohesive fighting force that's severely compromised. And here's the thing, even in victory, maintaining your own unit cohesion, it's essential.
Absolutely. You're on the verge of a major win, but if you're not careful, if you don't maintain that unit cohesion, it could slip away.
Clausewitz calls this the crisis stage of victory. You're winning, but you're still vulnerable. If your forces get scattered, lose discipline.
It's like you've taken the objective, but your troops are celebrating, dispersed, and suddenly, bam, a counterattack.
Yeah.
That's the danger of that crisis stage, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So how does this idea, this crisis stage, which Clausewitz was writing about, what during the musket and bayonet era, how does that translate to modern warfare, where everything moves so much faster?
Well, it's incredibly relevant, even more so today, because think about it. Modern combat, it's all about speed and maneuverability. Rapid deployment, drone strikes, cyber warfare. Battles unfold so fast now.
Which means,
That crisis stage is amplified. The window to capitalize on a win, or even just to recover from a setback, it's dramatically shorter.
exactly. Those decisive moments Clausewitz talks about, they happen in a flash now.
Yeah.
And this makes timing absolutely critical.
Yeah.
It's about recognizing that fleeting opportunity, to press your advantage or to regroup and salvage a failing situation. And this is where Clausewitz's emphasis on the strategic use of reserves, it becomes so important.
So it's not just about having a fresh battalion, waiting in the wings,
Right?
but about deploying them at precisely the right moment to tip the scales. But Clausewitz also argued that the very presence of those reserves could have a psychological impact.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Imagine you're on the enemy side, feeling the fatigue of battle, when suddenly you get reports of fresh enemy troops arriving. It impacts morale. It makes you question your opponent's strength and your own ability to push forward. It can be a powerful deterrent.
It's like a mental chess game on the battlefield. And of course, when deployed effectively,
Yeah.
at that crucial moment, reserves can completely turn the tide. Exactly. Napoleon, for example, he was a master of this. Think about the Battle of Austerlitz. In 1805, he held a significant portion of his forces in reserve, allowing the enemy to advance, and even think they were gaining the upper hand. Then, bam, he unleashed his reserves at the decisive moment, shattering the enemy lines and securing a stunning victory.
Classic Napoleonic tactics. Okay, so we've talked about the key factors that determine this turning point. Loss of objectives, loss of critical terrain, and that delicate balance of unit cohesion, all magnified by the speed of modern warfare. But Clausewitz also points out that other elements are at play, right? Things like the size of the forces involved, the time of day, even the terrain itself can all influence how these battles unfold.
He argues that these factors can all impact the duration of that critical crisis stage. A smaller, more mobile force, for example, will naturally regroup and recover faster than a larger, more cumbersome one. Think about the difference between a light infantry company and a heavily armored division.
Right? Less to coordinate, less to get bogged down. What about the time of day? How does that factor into these calculations? Clausewitz specifically mentions nightfall.
He does. And for good reason. Darkness, as you know, can provide cover for a retreating force, making it difficult to press an advantage. But it can also mask the movement of troops, potentially setting the stage for a surprise counterattack.
A double-edged sword, then. And of course, modern warfare with night vision technology, thermal imaging, and sophisticated surveillance drones, fighting after sunset is a whole different ballgame now.
It is. Modern technology has definitely added layers of complexity to Clausewitz's observations. Urban environments, for example, with their close-quarter fighting, and limited maneuverability for large forces can significantly prolong the crisis stage as well.
And the potential for civilian presence adds a whole other layer of complexity and risk.
Absolutely. It's a reminder that warfare is rarely fought on a neat and tidy battlefield. These are incredibly complex situations with human lives at stake, which makes understanding Clausewitz's principles even more critical, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because even though the tools of warfare have evolved, the fundamental dynamics of conflict, those decisive moments that can swing a battle, they remain remarkably consistent. It's like Clausewitz gives us this framework for understanding the chaos of the battlefield.
He does. And within that framework, he delves into the effectiveness of flank and rear attacks, particularly when trying to turn the tide of a battle. You see this tactic throughout military history.
It's like he's saying that these types of attacks, hitting the enemy from an unexpected direction, can be especially effective during that vulnerable crisis stage, when the enemy is transitioning from attack to consolidation. Their forces might be more spread out, their attention divided. It's a prime opportunity to exploit.
Precisely. He highlights the dual impact of surprise and vulnerability. The enemy is already feeling the pressure of a prolonged engagement, and a well-timed flank or rear attack, it can completely disrupt their plans and shift the momentum back in your favor. And historically, it's a tactic that has proven incredibly effective.
From ancient battles like Cannae, where Hannibal encircled and decimated a much larger Roman army, to more modern examples like the Battle of Chancellorsville in the American Civil War, where Stonewall Jackson's flanking maneuver against the Union Army caught them completely off guard. It's about disrupting the enemy's sense of control, keeping them off balance.
And those elements of surprise and disruption, they are even more potent when you consider the speed and maneuverability of modern warfare. Think about the role of special forces, for example.
Right, with their ability to insert behind enemy lines,
Yeah.
disrupt communication, and create chaos before a larger force even engages. It's about maximizing those moments of vulnerability that Clausewitz identifies. But he also talks about knowing when to hold back, right? Recognizing when a battle is truly lost, and it's time to regroup rather than risk further losses.
He makes a real point of separating renewing a fight that you can still win versus just throwing good after bad, what he calls resetting, starting fresh after a clear defeat. That's different from just blindly reinforcing something that's already lost.
Recognizing when sending more troops, more resources into a losing battle, it's just going to make things worse. And that's got to be a hard call to make.
Oh, absolutely. And Clausewitz, he's like, don't let the desire for revenge or that instinct to just immediately take back what you've lost, don't let that cloud your judgment.
Because it's easy to say that here, but in the heat of the moment.
Right. Rallying for that second attack, it can be tempting. Sometimes it's even necessary. But he's really emphasizing that it should never come at the cost of, actually making the smart strategic decision.
He uses the example of General Blücher, right, at the Battle of Montmirail.
Yeah, Blücher's a great example. He sees 2 Prussian corps defeated just days before, but still feels compelled to attack Napoleon right away. At Montmirail, valiant effort, driven by that desire to strike back. But in the end, a costly decision based more on emotion than a real hard look at the situation.
Even the most seasoned commanders, they aren't immune to that emotional pull. It's about finding that balance, recognizing when to seize the moment and when to hold back, regroup, and wait for a better opportunity.
And that's what's so great about Clausewitz. He understood that warfare, it's not just about physical force. It's a battle of wills, of perception. You've got to recognize those shifts in momentum, those psychological turning points. They can be what makes or breaks the entire conflict.
Mastering the mental game of warfare, anticipating your opponent. So this chapter, with how much it focuses on those key moments in battle, it still feels so relevant to how we think about military strategy today. even with all the technological advances since Clausewitz's time.
It really speaks to his ability to see through the fog of war to those core principles, those things that stay constant. And it gives you a framework that you can apply across centuries, really, regardless of the technology involved.
So for someone in your position, having dedicated so much time to studying military strategy and history, what would you say is the biggest takeaway from this chapter? What should someone on the front lines, making those split-second decisions, what should they really take to heart?
It always goes back to recognizing those pivotal moments, those
Yeah.
turning points where one decision, one maneuver can completely shift the balance. Being present in those moments, thinking clearly, and having the courage to act decisively. It's like understanding the rhythm of the battle, feeling those shifts in momentum, and knowing when to seize the initiative.
Training your mind to see the battlefield like Clausewitz did, to recognize those moments. Well, this has been a fantastic deep dive. Clausewitz can be a challenging read, but we've covered some really crucial concepts here. Those make-or-break moments in battle.
Absolutely. And while we've obviously focused on Clausewitz's insights today, we always encourage you, explore this further, read his work, think critically about it, apply your own experiences to his theories.
Because the best commanders out there, they're the ones who can blend that theoretical understanding with their practical experience, adapting their strategies as the situation demands.
So as you continue exploring military strategy and history, keep Clausewitz close at hand. There's timeless wisdom there. For those who lead and those who serve, a reminder that victory often belongs to those who can navigate the complexities of conflict and who capitalize on those decisive moments that shape the course of history.